Good evening, Saints. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our weekly news review. And we're going to be going over a number of things that are happening in the earth. I'm going to give folks a few moments to join us. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's always a pleasure to see each and every one of you as we gather for these updates that are presented with a biblical perspective. We've got a lot of things to cover tonight. And so I encourage you to share, to like, to subscribe, to invite your friends, and allow us to share some of the things that are going on in the earth today that I believe will be very pertinent for the days that are ahead of us. And I know a lot of you were sent up very nice notes of encouragement during our last broadcast, and I just wanted to thank you all for that. I am so happy that you are joining us, and I pray that you take these news items and things into prayer, and also to alert those that may not be aware of the things that are happening in our world. As we go week to week here, we're going to be covering a lot of different things that some of which you may already know about, and so it may be review. That's the point of the review, but also there may be some things that you were not aware of. And I believe that is, there are some things that as brothers and sisters in Messiah, as people of faith, you should know that are either already fulfilling Bible prophecy or are setting up for the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. In either case, it is an excellent idea for us to review those things and to be aware, and also to be sensitive to what is happening around us. When we are more aware of the circumstances, the political landscape, the issues of our society, I believe that to be informed makes you more capable of being wise in your decisions. So let's go over some of the news stories that we're covering at this time. I pray that all of you can hear me just fine. If anyone can't, please let me know. And there we go. Please let me know that you can hear me. Should be good now. Please let me know if you can hear the sound. I pulled the microphone a little bit and it did not work. Is it now working? Somebody give me a 5x5. Good to go. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you so much, honey. Thanks for having my back out there. Loud and clear. Amang and Amang. Hey, out there in California. Good to see you folks. Good to see all of you. Grateful for you to be here. Let's get into the news, shall we? First of all, I wanted to point out something that many of you may not be aware of. So if you're going to be traveling internationally, you want to know this before you get on a plane. So let's take a quick look at this piece of news. The human bodies are being scanned at airports. This is a critical piece of news at this time because in order for you to get past their security, they are looking at your actual, if whether or not you have luciferase in your bloodstream. Now, this story is a video, so you can watch the video on Rumble if you care to, but this is information you should be aware of. So I was listening to reports this week, a number of reports on BitChute that indicated that there were people who were stranded overseas because they had gone to the airport with a fake passport because they were just trying to get past and get on the plane and get home. And they got caught because the airports are now using some type of black light device to determine if you have luciferase in your body. So the noose is starting to tighten, and the persecution level will likely increase over the next very short period of time for those who refuse to comply. And many people were left stranded at connecting flights or trying to board a flight coming home. And so this is serious stuff that they're starting to scan. And the next story confirms this. So take a quick look here and you'll see that this is as of last week, Biden signs a G20 declaration agreeing to force Americans to use the vaccine passports for international travel. So this is very, very dangerous and important information for everyone to know. And again, some of you may not be traveling internationally, but if you were planning to, you would want to know this information. So again, thank you for liking, sharing, and for encouraging others to watch with your comments. Joe Biden signed a G20 Bali leaders declaration pledging for America to adopt vaccine passports to facilitate international travel. Paragraph 23 of the declaration explains that facilitating seamless international travel in the future will require trusting global digital health networks that should capitalize and build on the success of the existing standard in digital COVID-19 certificates. The White House goes on to state that it supports the World Health Organization's mRNA vaccine technology transfer hub and other tracing programs and enhancing cooperation among developing countries. So what this tells you, folks, is that they are slowly and quietly establishing this web, this digital fencing, if you will, that people will now have to go through. So you no longer can travel freely through their systems without compliance. And so, again, this is becoming much more difficult. I wonder, as I watch this, what is the chance that it stays only on international travel? And depending upon effectiveness, will they then begin to require it for even domestic travel, which is a possibility none of us can rule out, because none of us thought we'd even see some of what we're seeing today. So we cannot rule out the possibility that they will start to implement this even in country, if you will. And again, once the technology has cracked, if you will, once they begin to do something in one place or another, it has a tendency to ripple. Power has a tendency to grow in the hands of those that are, well, frankly, power hungry. So here we go. Little by little, they will try to probably get everybody, just like my sister said. And that's exactly what's going on. They're circling their wagons. Their system requires compliance. And the more people that are awake are a threat to them. After all, who would be the ones that would man any tribunals or any Nuremberg type trials? Well, it would be people who are either surviving victims or themselves untouched by such contamination, who could then hold them accountable. So you can understand their absolute desire to eliminate as many opponents as they can. This is a dangerous time. We'll be keeping an eye on this particular story and this kind of information as we go forward. Another story that I want to alert your attention to that is extremely dangerous, something that we have talked about at length yet in times past, is the number of chemicals and the number of contaminants that we are exposed to on a regular basis. A high amount of harmful chemicals were found in sanitary napkins, showing that, of course, they are shameless in their attack against the reproduction of humans, of course. And so high amounts of chemicals linked with heart disorders, diabetes, and cancer have been found in popular sanitary napkins sold in India, according to a study done by a Delphi-based environmental NGO. The study by NGO Toxics Link found the presence of phthalates and volatile organic compounds in a total of 10 samples, 6 inorganic and 4 organic sanitary pads available in the market. And so this is another front that we have been anticipating, and unfortunately, they are unashamedly willing to do harm in just any which way they can. So again, this is an area that we take for granted. And I think that when you begin to do some homework, what you're going to find is that there's more and more studies that are starting to be released. We'll be probably covering more stories concerning your everyday household items, which are now suspect. And we need to take a closer look at what we're allowing to put on our hair, under our arms, on our skin, etc. And so taking these things for granted, trusting, all relationships are based in trust. And I can say, for at least for me and my house, our trust level cannot be lower when it comes to some of these things that are being sold on the market. So I want to continue to warn you all that you are in a war, and this is an all-out, all-stakes, multifaceted war. This is not a conventional conflict as we are accustomed to imagining. And those who are the ones who painted those imaginations are the ones we're at war with. So they deliberately diverted our attention to a certain type of warfare while they conducted other forms of warfare, which are meant to steal, kill, and destroy. Anything like this that is meant to harm your reproduction is essentially in advance killing your children. This is a premeditated thing attempting to destroy the seed. And that is exactly what was prophesied to happen. So this is one of the reasons why Messiah gave them a warning and said it would be better. Some people, it's better they were never born. Let's just say it like that. All right, moving on to the next story. The death toll in Indonesia in this earthquake climbs past 250. I don't know if you're paying attention to this, but the number of earthquakes and seismic events throughout the earth are dramatically increasing. Nobody said that it had to be naturally increasing earthquakes. He just said that there would be earthquakes in diverse places. So something that Messiah knew would be that what technology would be available toward the end upon his arrival. And there are those that are very concerned about this particular earthquake and are watching it with great interest. 250 people are already accounted dead, with many of the victims' children buried alive at school. As survivors, search for survivors trapped beneath rubble continues. It was a 5.6 quake. It struck Indonesia's main island of West Java on Monday. At least 268 people, it says here, have died and more than 1,000 are injured after the quake. And the death toll from the devastating earthquake hit Indonesia's main island. And so the number of people that they're reporting is going to continue to rise as we go. And this wasn't a particularly strong earthquake in terms of numbers. I've seen bigger, but look at the devastation. Look at what it did when it hit. And this is what we're judging by, if you will, is the actual damage. And because this particular earthquake was so shallow, it did catastrophic damage in Indonesia. And so there are further reports that we are watching. And again, I don't believe, personally, this reporter, if you will, does not believe that this was a naturally occurring event. We are highly suspicious of these shallow earthquakes and what may be causing them. We may come to find out that there's technology in the earth used to extort governments and used to manipulate people groups so as to get what they want. I know that Indonesia is a country that is breaking away from the control matrix that, generally speaking, dictates to the world. And this control matrix is losing power by the day. So this appears to many, and again, just something to consider, as a bit of a retaliatory thing. We can't prove it, but it is certainly suspicious. And this will be something we're going to watch as developments come out about this. And there's more to this story. But for now, we need to be praying for those in Indonesia. Some of these photographs for a 5.6. Again, I'm just going to put these back on the screen. For a 5.6 earthquake, this seems almost too much damage. This is what's got me really suspicious. And I mean, again, not to minimize the power of an earthquake, but a 5.6, I wouldn't expect this kind of damage. I would expect this kind of damage from an 8. So this is definitely there's something going on here. There's more here than meets the eye, and we'll be keeping an eye on this story as it develops over the next several weeks, because I believe there's going to be more that's going to come out. My suspicion, and again, this is just my inkling that I'm looking at, and I've got a couple of sources that I'm waiting for confirmation, but I believe there are those that are trying desperately to keep their world order operating, and they need capital. They need it bad, and they're looking for ways to get it. And they're using big toys because they're big boys. So this is going to get serious. And Saints, this is why we have to be aware of what's going on and be sensitive for the sake of those that are in harm's way. We most certainly need to be praying and compassionate people to the victims of this conflict, which is going to continue to expand. Again, it's a multi-dimensional conflict, and assuming things are what they are on the surface would be naive. Another story that we're watching carefully, I think many of you may be aware that there's tremendous change that appears to be happening in China. And this story was sent by our internal news reporter. Thank you, Octavia, for always making sure that I get a few extra great stories to talk about. And this is one that was sent to me. President Xi's sick and deranged zero COVID policy destroying his country is finally crumbling thanks to the brave Chinese freedom fighters. And of course, this is a story that is erupting, and it won't take you long to find information about this. And so you can certainly go online and find lots of stories that are talking about this and talking about the imminent ruinage, if you will, of this COVID policy and all things COVID with regard to China. And so, if you look, for example, at Drudge Report, right at the top of Drudge Report today, this is the story that they're running. Here, I'll put that again on the screen. China COVID revolution, biggest protest since Tiananmen Square. I've heard that multiple times. Does Xi face a coup? Cops are clamping down. Of course, the U.S. is going to criticize. And so this is going to be a serious, serious thing. We're going to see a lot of footage, I believe, that's going to come out that will be hard to watch, but it is part of the process so that we can not only be aware, but prayerfully cover those that are in harm's way. Now, before I go on, I want to just say that I personally believe the reason for this shakeup that is going on in China is the underground remnant that is praying with unceasing diligence before the King of Glory. Several years ago, he began to show me that China had a very strong remnant of believers in the truth. This group is hidden, but they are a hidden generator of great courage, people willing to lay their lives down. And this is what it will take to break the power of to break tyrannical, dictatorial, or authoritarian power. It requires that kind of sacrifice. And so there's a great remnant there, and I believe that remnant is strengthening as we go. So there are things that are happening that I don't think can be reversed. Here again is another story. Let's put this up on the screen. China's COVID revolution, 3 years of growing anger over Beijing's obsession with failing lockdowns, is exploding across the country. But will Xi crack down? So now that all eyes are on China to see what they're going to do. Will they crack down? This is the insanity that people are seeing outside their doors. This is the absolute insanity that these average citizens are having to deal with. There's even a story that was recently carried on the news where several people died in a fire who were confined to their apartments because of the policies of the government. And so this is causing, unfortunately, many people lost their life in that fire. However, because they lost their lives and because that occurred, the amount of outrage and the amount of determination that is now sweeping across China is unprecedented. To give you a perspective, I have never heard of any Chinese protests, and Chinese protest lots of things, but I've never heard of a Chinese protest where they're criticizing the government and the current leader, Xi Jinping. This is unprecedented. That does not happen. So this is crossing sort of the red line. And now you have open groups chanting for the CCP to be dismantled, to be removed, to step down. So it is coming not from outside, but from within. And they are saying things like, give me liberty or give me death. One of the things that we're starting to see happening throughout the earth is various patriot movements connecting to one another. So the patriots in a country that you wouldn't even think would be allied are now allying with other patriots because they're realizing something. They're all fighting the same dark evil, the same enslaving power that is seeking to kill and destroy and to institute a totalitarian form of control that will wipe out even the semblance of freedom, which is all we actually have here in the West, is a semblance of freedom. Last week, we covered some of the economic damage that is happening as a result of the chilling relationship between the East and the West, and China and the United States specifically. And now we're seeing an all-out panic that is starting to hit the carriers because of the drop in consumer demand and frankly, because loads cannot be paid for. Again, the credit system of the big, larger players are being severely hindered. So carriers are in panic mode as recession bites. And this is a publication that deals specifically with transit. And ocean carriers are said to be in panic mode as bookings from China to North Europe and the U.S. West Coast tank, causing FAK rates to plunge to new depths despite aggressive blanking that has reduced weekly capacity on the trade lanes by more than a third. More than a third has dropped off. The lines have failed to slow the precipitous fall in short-term shipping rates. So that is good for the consumer and bad for the industry, and arguably fueling the fire by offering sub-economic spot rates via their digital platforms. So they're seeing a dramatic, aggressive price reduction in an attempt to stay in business. These carriers are offering unprecedented deals. Unfortunately, there are no takers because the economy has dramatically been affected by all of these ridiculous policies that have absolutely nothing to do with public health. And so here we have yet again more evidence of that, as consumer economy has completely collapsed It is a ghost town for holiday shopping everywhere. And this is being reported from all over, but here you see some quotes, crowds. I see nothing. I'm surprised. A retail worker told Fox Channel 2. And again, normally wrapped around the building. Today, nobody. Okay, so they're not seeing the kind of wonderful Black Friday. I want to show you guys. This was a big Black Friday, and look, you got this guy, crickets. That's what you got for that. That was their grand Black Friday celebrations, if you will. They're starting to fall apart, folks. People are figuring things out. They're no longer buying into consumerism for consumerism's sake. People are moving into a more survival mode. I believe they're wiser than the news is telling them what to do. They're figuring it out, and that's a very good thing. It means we can start having some more candid conversations with folks that are starting to figure it out. Remember, it doesn't matter where they awaken. It doesn't matter what they awaken to. They can awaken to the evil in banking. They could awaken to the evil in the medical fields. They could awaken to big food, okay, and start talking about contaminants in food. They could awaken to big water and start talking about contaminants in water. They can awaken to big cosmetics, things we don't even talk about a lot, but they may awaken to anything. Whatever they awaken to, go there. Don't steer them to something else. Go there and go deep there, because that will cause their hunger for knowing the truth to grow. So it doesn't matter what they could start on lipstick. They could talk about the contaminants in lipstick, and that's their trigger point. Great. Let's begin there. And you'll find that you'll have now something to talk about with them about other areas they need to be red pilled. What else don't you know? What else have they lied to you about? You understand? So we have to take advantage of these opportunities to open new discussions, because a lot of people are suffering for what they don't know. And the scripture says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. As I reported last week, we are watching Brazil with great interest. And again, going to put this tweet up. And this is some of the latest information that's coming out. Bolsonaro removes his concession and asks Brazil's Superior Electoral Court to declare him the winner. In representation to the TSE and a Liberal Party, states that Bolsonaro had 51% of the vote in the second election round. Additionally, overwhelming evidence from the audit supporters supports that there was malfunctioning in the voting machines. And so there are movements happening here, which I believe are going to result in, at minimum, a new election, and quite possibly they will simply fix what is pretty obviously suspicious. Let's just leave it at that. It's quite suspicious, right? So at minimum, this is very suspicious. They should either do it again. Without these stupid machines, I don't know how hard can that be to just simply count. They have county workers, they have people all over. It may take a day or two, but you count them. You count the actual pieces of paper. I mean, goodness, if you have two candidates, you can just put them in two piles. So this has been made complicated and deliberately, so as to manipulate the results. And I don't think we're naive to that anymore. And so here's the full story that backs up the tweet. So you know it's not just somebody tweeting about it. This was reported as of last week, and he did in fact file a representation at the TSE court for the annulment. And they're going back quite a few years with some of these boxes and I found this to be interesting. Anybody else notice that gap from 15 to 22? Anytime I see the year 2015, I always pay extra attention because so much happened during that year. And so I encourage you to be aware of these things, because, again, these are going to affect your world. If they're cheating, if they're lying, this is essentially taking authority without authorization, unauthorized power grabbing, and in some cases, it is treason. So depending upon who's funding this, And depending upon where the impetus is coming from, if it is foreign, if it is coming from central powers that are trying to take control, this could result in some very serious charges and changes as a result. I believe this is a very good thing. I believe light is a good thing. Very good thing. Speaking of light, something you may not be aware of and probably would have passed your radar even if you knew about it. And that's that there's been a new prime minister installed in Malaysia. Let's take a quick look. Anwar Ibrahim, the PH coalition, named Malaysia's 10th prime minister. And you may think this is an uneventful thing. After all, Malaysia, what do we have to do with Malaysia? How many remember that there was a plane that went down? We couldn't figure out what happened with that plane. Well, this story is important because there are underground rumors. We will be watching this prime minister with great interest. Anwar Ibrahim, the leader of Malaysia's Pakatan Harapan coalition, has been named the 10th prime minister of the country. The National Palace said on Thursday in a statement. Swearing-in ceremony will be held at 5 p.m. And of course, he is installed as the country's prime minister. And I believe that you're going to be hearing a little more about that flight. Now, we'll watch with interest, but I just thought I'd alert you early so that you were aware of this, because these things can kind of happen without us knowing. And again, there are powers that rather we don't know certain things. So we have to go outside the bandwidth of what we consider to be normal channels for information to ferret out the truth. And this is a very interesting story that we're going to be watching for the next small amount of time. I believe you're going to see some things that rock the world. Just a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, rather, we did our Shabbat message was all their secrets shall be revealed. So stand by for secrets to be revealed. And in other news, we're seeing an increase in tensions in the Middle East, one of the areas that, of course, we watch with tremendous interest. And this, of course, is square in Bible prophecy. So we have to keep an eye on this time period. And I don't know if you knew this. I didn't see any announcements, all over the U.S. airwaves, but here in the Jerusalem Post, we see that Israel and the U.S. are to hold air drills simulating striking Iran's nuclear program. The drill, one of the largest Israeli Air Force drills in years, will include long-range flights such as those that Israeli pilots might need to make in order to reach Iran. The Israeli Air Force this week will be holding one of its largest drills in years, with the United States Air Force simulating offensive strikes against Iran's nuclear program. How many times have we seen a practice run of anything that did not result in the actual thing they were practicing? The drill will take place from Tuesday until Thursday over the Mediterranean Sea and Israel. It will include long-range flights, and the exercise will include refuelers as well as fighter jets from both forces. Okay. So Washington and Israel have signed an agreement that would see the U.S. come to assist Israel with missile defense in times of war. And the two militaries have held numerous joint air defense exercises in recent years. So tensions between Israel and Iran remain high. Those of you that are aware of the Albert Pike prophecy concerning the Third World War will find this quite interesting, as what we're seeing is a competition between, shall we say, prophetic utterances in an attempt to fulfill their long predicted conflict. I believe they're setting the stage. So again, all the more reason to be paying attention. Now, every single time, at least in recent memory, where there was a conference or a special gathering or any kind of effort where they were, quote, practicing or running a drill, okay, or any other such thing, what I have generally seen in my experience, is you had better be prepared for whatever they're drilling about, because it's highly likely we're going to see it. Just my experience. We'll see. We'll watch with interest to see if what we suspect to happen will happen, right? So we'll be paying attention. So will you be surprised to find out that there's changes going on in Turkey? Now, if you draw a line directly north of Israel and you go straight north, you can't hit Russia. You're going to hit Turkey. Okay, so a lot of people are expecting conflict to come from Turkey, which is the place where Pergamum was. So this was Lucifer's seat. And let's take a quick look here. The Turkish president announces possibility of cross-border ground operations. So now there's saber rattling on this side. They're not directly speaking to one another. However, I would remind you all that Turkey's relationship with NATO seems to be coming to an end. And the gravitational pull toward the east is very strong. So what we thought was an ally may not be an ally for the United States. Ankara may carry out a cross-border ground operation in the near future, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced on Tuesday. We know the names, whereabouts, and profiles of what they call terrorists. So different groups determine what they consider to be terrorists. If you were a Canaanite, then the Israelites would be terrorists. You get it? And so it depends on what side you're on, who's the terrorist, right? So we even know who provides them with shelter and weapons and who encourages them. God willing, we look at this. Look who he's invoking. God willing, we will soon use our tanks and artillery to destroy terrorist routes. And of course, this is coming from the Russian news agency, so take that into consideration as you review this story. And what we're also seeing, and again, this is how we are starting to piece together some of these pieces, because they don't come right out and tell you what they're planning. Instead, what they do is they drop hints and go around, if you will, but they don't quite come right out and talk about it. After the events or after things happen, that would be a different story. And here again, here's another element of this that I believe is very telling. Erdogan is not updating Russia on Syria operations as they outline new policies. And so as Russia is bracing for an EU embargo on Russian crude and petroleum products, the G7 will announce a level of fixed price cap. So they're now in the midst of this issue, but they also understand that they're enemies on the ground. So if you look at this second paragraph in October, pay attention, folks. Russian oil imports to China climbed 16% higher than the same period last year. And so you're seeing the commerce is not being interrupted between these states that are disconnecting from the power of the West, and they are moving on. And so you're going to find other countries that are slowly going to get on board with what they are doing. As a matter of fact, if you remember last week's review, we discussed that the World Economic Forum had demanded something like $2 trillion from Africa, which frankly appears to be the way in which they intend to finance their new world order. Well, again, as we reported last week, and I believe this story only further confirms it, Africa basically told them to pound sand. So according to Reuters, Ghana plans to buy oil with gold instead of US dollars. This is huge because this goes around the dollar. This will plummet. This will cause a serious problem in the power of the dollar. Ghana's government is working on a new policy to buy oil products with gold rather than U.S. dollar reserves. Vice President, I don't know how to say his name, Buwamia, said on Facebook on Thursday, the move is meant to tackle dwindling foreign currency reserves coupled with the demand for dollars by oil importers, which is weakening the local credit and increasing living costs. Ghana's gross international reserves stood at around 6.6 billion at the end of September, equating to less than 3 months of imports cover. That's down from 9.7 billion at the end of last year. So Africa is going to begin to sell natural resources instead of trading in fiat dollars. What a shock. People are starting to figure out that the fiat system is not in their favor. And this is bad in many ways for the economic forecast, but excellent with regard to the freedom of the people themselves. After all, we're after freedom. Whom the sun sets free is free indeed. You may be aware that, again, this connects, I believe, with the Indonesian earthquake. And again, many people are paying attention to this story as Mauna Loa eruption continues. And so we're seeing that the Hawaii eruption is going on. Hawaii's volcano, Mauna Loa is erupting for the first time in 38 years. Let me refresh that very quickly. It's asking me to check in, and I'm not interested in that. And the Hawaii volcano erupts for the first time in 38 years as officials give urgent update on harmful ashfall. And again, you can watch more of this is starting to be reported on. You're seeing more and more coming in. The question again that I have in connection with this Indonesian earthquake that caused so much harm is, are they connected? Is something going on underground, or is some energy weapon being used? Who knows what we may later find out. So this is very interesting information. It's coincidentally at the same time as that earthquake. And I don't believe in coincidences. So something is happening, especially in the southeast theater. So something for us to keep an eye on. Also, last week we talked about the increase of demonic activity, and I believe you're going to continue to see more manifestations of those who are flat just lost their minds. And saints, this is why we have to be very aware, wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Some confrontations simply are not worth it. And here we see a Walmart shooter who wrote that he was led by Satan before killing 6 at a Virginia store. And the man accused of gunning down 6 co-workers inside a Walmart break room in Virginia wrote a note claiming he'd been led by Satan and complaining about his fellow employees and his troubles at work. The note, released by authorities on Friday, was discovered on the phone of Andre Bing, a 31-year-old accused of opening fire in Chesapeake, Virginia, Walmart, where he worked as an overnight team leader. A pre-shift meeting was underway on Tuesday when Bing, armed with a pistol and several magazines, started shooting at his fellow employees. He says, "Sorry, everyone, but I did not plan this. I promise things just fell in place like I was led by the Satan," the note read. According to police, Bing killed 6 people and wounded 4 others before turning the fire on himself. Police said he died from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. We're going to continue to see more devastating stories. Unfortunately, the demonic activity is going to continue to rise as those that believe they are providing a remedy are finding out that their rebuker doesn't work. This is a reality. And so we continue to see more and more of that activity. And we'll be covering that in weeks to come a little bit more as we go. But for tonight, we're going to leave that story at that. That is, again, just for your awareness so that you understand that there's a reason why we talk about the coming persecution, the arising persecution. They are only after you. You are the one group they do not control. So they are most certainly not pleased with you, and they are looking for ways to bring you under control. And now coming back home to our state of Arizona, and I promised to give you an update on that. And here we are on the date that they're supposed to be certifying the Arizona election. And of course, we know that candidate Lake, who was a candidate for Arizona governor, is seeking election records in a suit against an Arizona county. Carrie Lake, the defeated Republican, of course, they had to say she was defeated. Republican candidate for Arizona governor has filed a public records lawsuit demanding Maricopa County hand over a variety of documents related to the election. Lake has refused to acknowledge that she lost, so they want her to concede. And meanwhile, by the way, I can't find any video interviews by this so-called winner of the election, which is really, really disturbing. Usually when people win, they are out there shaking hands and having a party. So it's very interesting that Project Veritas tried to interview her, and she ran literally to the bathroom. And even her manager ran to the bathroom. So check out Project Veritas. You'll find that video, and you'll see that something's very, very wrong here. And that's why you're seeing our county, along with other counties, you're seeing counties in Arizona and Pennsylvania are failing to certify election results by the legal deadline. So the legal deadline was today. And these are not being filed. And of course, you see, as we reported before, there it is, Cochise County, and where? Southeastern Arizona is near Tucson, voted to delay certifying the results of this month's midterm elections. And that puts the whole thing on hold. Republicans in one Arizona county refuse to certify election results. So I'm not shocked that it comes from Cochise County. Is anybody else shocked? Republican officials who have embraced, look at this story, watch this. They've embraced voter fraud theories, resisted certifying the midterm election. So, of course, they're trying to make them look like they're crazy people for even so much as questioning the veracity of computer equipment that there were reports literally showing results changing before people's very eyes. And we're expected to believe this propaganda that those who are asking questions are just deniers. They're just a denier. And this is a very dismissive and dangerous tactic. It is the second of the three tests that any word must pass through. In Mark chapter 4, we are told specifically that the first attack will be a snatch, and the second attack on any word is persecution, ridicule, right? Peer pressure. This tactic is used to great effect. If they cannot just simply keep you from hearing about something, the next layer of defense appears to be ridicule. To absolutely mock mercilessly anybody who would dare believe in something that goes counter to the narrative. Unfortunately, those who are pushing narrative are proven wrong so often that it only encourages more and more review. And frankly, again, relationship is based in trust. And so when trust is gone, when they have removed that trust through their own actions, actions that we didn't tell them to take, nobody told them to take those actions, and they took them on their own, and those things are eroding public trust, they have no one else to blame but themselves. If they want to restore a public trust, you're probably going to have to do it again, this time without the oops. Thank you so much for joining us, folks. I hope you check your email if you're a member or a friend of Remnant House. We just sent out, and we don't send out too many emails. This one's important. We've got a deadline, we've got some things to accomplish, and we need your help. So thank you to every one of you who stand with this house, who stand with your brothers and sisters, who help us to make things happen that otherwise wouldn't. Because as you can see, perilous days are in fact coming. and we are walking toward them, ready or not. And my prayer for every one of you is that you will turn your heart toward home and remember, He is King. Thank you so much for joining us. God bless you all.